What's up, people? Welcome back to the channel. The voice still isn't, fully healed like all the way, but still want to get this video out. This is the video that I've been wanting, that I kind of been wanting to do for a bit, but this is like my 5 choices of I keep going back and forth. I want it to be either like highly used or most impactful number monsters. So like I do want to do some type of part 2 to this video where I talk about other good number monsters that have been used, like that have been used either like in certain combo decks or like like used as like a kind of like, or more like recently in the meta. But I want to use this list to focus on my like 5 choices for some of the more impactful number monsters. Alright guys, let's get into the cards. Okay, so I wanted to start this one off with an honorable mention, and that's number 106 Giant Hand. And with its first printing being a prize card, it was extremely hard for like the average player to get their hands on this unless they knew someone who had a copy, or they knew they knew someone who bought it, or knew someone who won it. So if this card was printed either as like a secret rare, or it was printed in a tin, or if it just is obtainable in any way, even if it was like a promo card that you would only get from the mangas, if it was available in any, like I said, any other way besides it being a price card, this would have been a number staple. The rest of these cards that I want to talk about were either numbers that were extremely powerful, or they're kind of like staples, and this card would have been that, like I said, if it got an actual printing. So let's go ahead and get into the list. The first one I want to go over is number 11 Big Eye. So I ended up putting this one. I was kind of going back and forth between this one and other ones, and cause like originally I wanted to just talk about numbers that were like really good during the XYZ era, but then I started looking at them and it's like, well, a lot of them were kind of good later. So I'm probably gonna do a part 2 of this list talking about other broken number monsters that maybe were good in certain niches. But number 11 Big Eye is one that I want to put on the list just because this one right here really defined the format of Dragon Rulers, and it also did the same thing with the Mermail deck, to where depending on if you went first or second, or how the game state was going, one of the ways you would basically win was you would Big Eye their Big Eye to go into a big play. So a lot of times you didn't want to be the first person to summon Big Eye. You rather put your opponent in a position where they're forced to Big Eye before you, so that way you could go for a big swing play. So the whole I guess like the reason why I ended up putting this card on the list is because just the way that it defined Dragon Lore format, to where a lot of the times a lot of people considered Big Eye more broken than Draco Sack, even though Draco Sack is really good. In fact, it gets 2 tokens, it protects itself. A lot of people would consider Big Eye the more threatening or more broken card of the 2 iconic rank 7 pairs of monsters you would use in that deck. And also too, even after the Dragon Rulers kind of started to fade away, this card still saw a lot of play in Mermail decks. So so it wasn't like it just instantly went away second Dragon Lords kind of went off. So for the first card of this, I wanted to put number 11 Big Eye. Second card I want to talk about is number 52 Diamond Crab King. It's been a while since this card has been staple, so I was kind of going back and forth. But the reason why I wanted to put this card on there was because before we had kaijus, when Towers was just a card that was just so incredibly hard to get over, and it was like I said, but before kaijus, getting over monsters that couldn't be targeted or destroyed was extremely difficult. You would have to jump through hoops with different techs and different ideas. Kaijus really simplified not only Yu-Gi-Oh as a whole, but just the ability to out different boards. There's probably a lot of cards that today, if they existed back before we had kaijus, which would just completely break Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh could get, I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh would be able to advance the way it has without having kaijus. But before all that, you would have number 52 Diamond Crab King, which had the ability to put himself at 3,000 and would be able to attack over the towers. This card was put into a lot of different a lot of different strategies, and I don't know. I just remember this always finding a way into into like a whole bunch of different decks, and its main use was to get over monsters like that or to like push for game. It was never really as like some, you know, some key combo. It was never used for, you know, you feel me? It was really, its only use was if someone had in their deck, it was because, oh, I need to get over towers, I gotta get over this monster, I do this combo and I push for game. So that's the reason why I went and go and put number 52 Diamond Crab King in this list. There's probably some other, you know, numbers that, you know, people might kind of like feel should be here, should be in, you know, in this spot instead of, you know, instead of this one. But go to check out, you know, part 2 to see if those numbers make it in that video. And number 3, I have number 16 Shockmaster. Shockmaster is like a little bit different because it really took something like windups to where you were going to, you know, like you had enough resource to bring it out. Like when it first came out, I remember like when I first heard about it, someone said, "Oh, this is really hard to get out." But then maybe about 2 weeks after I started playing, windups really took off as like the definitively best deck with all the different combos, and then its ability to get out Shockmaster was just completely just on a whole nother level, you know, compared to the other decks that were out there. And the fact that Shockmaster to this day would still be a good and broken card, that's the reason why I want to put this like on this list right in the middle, because this is a card that I would love to see come back, but it cannot come back. With all the different rank 4 spam, with all the different combos, there would be some deck that's going to abuse this, and just having the ability to like take out a third of your opponent's either options or their whole deck, depending on what it is. Because, you know, like if you call traps in a trap deck, they're done all the way. So depending on what deck you're playing, this is either very crippling or just completely devastating. So number 16 Shockmaster, for like, you know, like numbers that have like huge impact, I would say I'll put that right there in the middle of the list. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and talk about number 101 Silent Honor Arc. So I guess maybe like Shockmaster is way more broken than number 101 on Arc, but I'm also trying to like pinpoint numbers that were more widely used. Like, you know, it wasn't like every, like, you know, not like, it wasn't like every single deck was using, you know, Shockmaster, but Shockmaster had a very huge impact. The same like Big Eye, like not everyone was using Big Eye, but it had a big impact. Number 101 Silent Arc did have that impact. It was one of like the first, like it was, I'm gonna say one of the first, but it was a very good way to just remove monsters that couldn't be destroyed by, you know, by card effects, or maybe that couldn't be bounced, or, you know, just some kind of effect that prevented from being destroyed. Number 101 Silent Arc was a way for you just to absorb that monster, and then it also had ability to protect itself from being destroyed by battle card effect by attaching it as a material. So it was an extremely useful card, and before Lightning Storm, people actually started putting their special summon monsters in defense mode just so you could get around, you know, number 101 on Arc. But a lot of boss monsters had low defense, so you can kind of beat over a little easier. So yeah, so I ended up putting number 101 on Arc here just because of the amount of people who were using it and the impact that it had on the game. Alright, and for the last card on this list, we got number 41, Bagooska the Terribly Tired Taper. To this day, Bagooska is still being put into multiple different decks. It did come out way later in the number era. Like if this would have came out like in the beginning of XYZ era, this would have been so broken. But at the same time, this card from its inception all the way to today constantly finds its way into decks. Even if it's not the number one option, even if it's not the go-to thing, it finds its way as either an option if you have a bad hand, or maybe if you get interrupted, or maybe it is kind of part of like a small little end board, you know. So but Bagooska, I just decided to give it the number, like, you know, like the number one spot on this list for extremely powerful and impactful number monsters. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Keep an eye out for part 2, because I will be talking about other number monsters that were good in the meta but maybe weren't as impactful as these right here. Alright guys, if you guys, you know, if you guys maybe, you know, have some ideas of which numbers were a little bit more impactful. And I'm also taking consideration, like, being very competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! I understand there's numbers out there that have really good effects and they were good with this one combo, but also maybe that one combo deck was only good for one format. So I kind of want to focus on cards that have a lot of longevity or really change the game. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Peace out, and I'll catch you in the next one.